Welcome to your ultimate pit stop, Piston Pundit. North America's trade gears are grinding into a new formation as Mexico and Canada unveil a $120 billion northern corridor, crafted to bypass U.S. tariffs on steel, auto parts, lithium batteries, and more. Triggered by President Trump's 30% tariff threat starting August 1st, this once quiet duo is now racing ahead with a full-throttle trade alliance. Railways, digital customs, LNG swaps. It's not just logistics, it's a strategic shift. So how will this impact U.S. ports and Detroit's assembly lines? Buckle up. Here are the key developments that could reshape the map. The spark. Tariffs unite Mexico and Canada. The fuse was lit on July 12, 2025. President Trump announced a sweeping 30% tariff on imports from Mexico and Canada, targeting steel, auto parts, and copper, set to kick in by August 1st. The message? Clear disruption to North America's core supply chains. In response, Mexico and Canada didn't flinch. They mobilized. President Claudia Sheinbaum coordinated directly with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, vowing to protect trade under the USMCA framework. Together, they sketched out a bold alternative, a northern corridor designed to completely bypass U.S. ports and tariffs. It wasn't just political. Mexico engaged industrial leaders like Carlos Slim and major steel players, aligning cross-border investment. Canada, already 5 years into its Pacific port expansion, quietly accelerated infrastructure spending. This wasn't a panic move, it was a purpose-driven alliance. Economic pressure turned competitors into collaborators. What began as a diplomatic reaction quickly morphed into a unified strategy that could reshape trade routes across the continent. That corridor, built on coordination, not confrontation, is now poised to disrupt U.S. logistics in a big way. And now that the partnership is solid, let's see how this ambitious plan translates into real-world mechanics. Corridor mechanics, steel rails, and smart customs. Forget one road. This is a multi-lane speedway of trade. First up, the Pacific Shortlink, a rail-to-port lifeline connecting Mexico's lithium and EV subcomponent hubs in Monterrey and Sonora straight to Canada's Prince Rupert terminal. No U.S. tracks, no U.S. tolls. Next, the Great Lakes Flow Ring reinvents how Canadian raw materials, think steel and nickel sulfate, sail out through the Atlantic, bypassing U.S. ports like Buffalo. These goods reroute via offshore logistics near Cuba and enter Mexico as tariff-exempt goods in Veracruz. Result? A 27% drop in U.S. inland cargo traffic. Chicago and Buffalo could feel like ghost towns on some docks. Then comes the digital backbone, a cross-border smart manifest linking Canada's blockchain-enabled customs with Mexico's port geographic systems. Freight gets cleared electronically before touching a ship or train. No inspections, no U.S. oversight, no federal fees. Estimated loss for the U.S. in border processing revenue alone? A cool $3.5 billion per year. If you're enjoying this deep dive, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. At Piston Pundit, we break down how policy, powertrains, and trade deals impact your world, right here in the fast lane. Now let's head straight into the front lines of disruption, because nowhere is the impact of this corridor more visible than in the beating heart of American auto manufacturing. Impact Zone, Detroit's EV dreams derail. With this corridor humming, the ripple effect for U.S. logistics is more like a tidal wave. In 2024, over 750 billion tons of Canada-Mexico trade passed through U.S. gates, with $138 billion rerouted to third-party nations. This new setup plans to siphon off nearly half, about $69 billion, by the end of 2026. Midwestern manufacturers are about to feel it in their torque-converted bones. Cheaper lithium batteries from Monterrey. They'll now take the scenic Canadian route, cutting out American processors. GM Cami and Biotech EV will launch this non-U.S. supply chain by March 2026. The fallout? Up to 360,000 fewer EVs assembled in Detroit annually, wiping out 108,000 indirect jobs and draining $12.7 billion in regional income. Zooming out, This isn't just a hit to factories. It's a $120 billion economic blow in just 2 years. From fuel haulers to freight brokers, from welders to warehouse crews, entire ecosystems stand to lose. And while jobs shift and revenue vanishes, the corridor is quietly unlocking a new advantage: clean energy alignment. Clean energy and carbon credits. The corridor's surprise advantage. While the flashy rail lines and sea routes steal headlines, another powerful undercurrent is flowing: energy and environmental strategy. Canada has inked a deal to export 5 million tons of LNG annually from Kitimat to Manzanillo, Mexico. What's the kicker? That gas used to head to California. Now, with this corridor in place, Mexico's industries gain a stable supply while California consumers are left holding the bill, an estimated $3.1 billion in added electricity costs due to rising wholesale prices. But here's where it gets turbocharged. This isn't just rerouting gas. It's building a carbon-aligned alliance. Canada's low-emission steel and Mexico's advanced lithium batteries could align perfectly with the EU's tightening climate rules. Brussels plans to enforce stricter carbon border adjustments, and guess who's ready to capitalize? This corridor. That alignment could mean clean certification, higher demand, and even exemption from certain EU tariffs. Suddenly, what started as a workaround to Trump's trade policies is morphing into a green-certified express lane for North American exports. For Canada and Mexico, it's a masterstroke of trade and climate strategy rolled into one powerful platform. So with logistics optimized and green credentials stacking up, it's time to look at the political momentum behind it all. Political leverage and the inescapable new normal. Now that the plans are funded and the tracks are being laid, implementation has begun in earnest. Canada's Export Development Bank has pledged 2.1 billion Canadian dollars, and Mexico's Bancomext added 27 billion pesos to get the wheels turning, literally. Shipments could launch within 6 months, and if everything runs smoother and cheaper than US alternatives, this corridor may cement itself into the trade map for good. Here's the real curveball: path dependency. Even if the US ditches the tariffs next year, reversing course might not be enough. Businesses don't just uproot established logistics flows for the fun of it. Once the corridor proves it's faster, cheaper, and cleaner, $68 per ton versus $102 per ton via the US, it becomes the default. That means America could be left waving from the sidelines. The longer Washington waits, the more entrenched the new supply chain becomes. Green infrastructure, blockchain-based customs, cross-border LNG swaps, these aren't just temporary detours. They're building blocks of a more autonomous, modernized North America, and that takes us to the final stretch. What lies ahead for North American trade? The final gear. What happens next? The Northern Corridor is more than just a trade workaround. It's a structural overhaul built on rails, ports, LNG lines, and carbon strategy. If it delivers on its promise, this cross-border alliance could permanently reroute supply chains away from the US, especially hammering the Midwest where auto assembly and logistics thrive. Billions in freight revenue, tens of thousands of jobs, and access to clean tech components are now in play. And while the corridor looks fast and fuel-efficient on paper, its future hinges on execution. Will shipments launch on time? Will carbon incentives lure European buyers? Will Washington adjust or cling to outdated trade levers? One thing's certain, this isn't just about policy, it's about powertrain-level shifts in North America's economic engine. Now it's your turn to weigh in. Will the US hold firm on tariffs or shift gears once economic pressure mounts? Can Detroit and the Midwest maintain their competitive edge if cut out of this corridor? Is this the start of a permanent realignment in North American trade? Sound off in the comments. We want to hear from fellow gearheads and global thinkers alike. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to stay updated with Piston Pundit, your ultimate pit stop for vehicle insights and trade-shifting updates. Thanks for riding with us. Until next time, keep your mind sharp, your engines tuned, and your curiosity in overdrive. You can now check out any of the videos on the screen. There's plenty more to explore.